Oops. Hang on a second. Sorry, I gotta do this again. Okay, our next, for years from the 1960s to the 21st century, our next storyteller was in an institution. Wait, I think I misread that. Our next storyteller was an institution, not in an institution. He was an institution on the streets of Chicago as owner-operator of newsstands and kosher delis and books and magazine stores. I could tell you all about this, but you can pick up one of his brand new 2 books and read all about them yourself. 2 great books from a man who's lived a fascinating life. And there's 1,000 stories. There's 1,000 stories in The Naked City, and there's about 2,000 stories in Bob Katzman's city. So without further ado, Bob Katzman.
First time doing this voluntarily. So I have to tell you a couple of things because real life is convoluted. Of course, you know that, don't you? All right. If you know the word chutzpah, which is Yiddish, which means outrageous behavior, normally identified as man kills his parents and throws himself on the mercy of the court by claiming he's an orphan. I've redefined that. This is a 2-volume autobiography from 1950 to 1985. You won't like it because it's filled with sex and violence and revenge and corruption, but don't let that hold you back. It's 1,050 pages, and I bet you it's going to sell. So, chutzpah, going forward, not fiction. Okay. For this to make sense, you have to know a couple of things first. I left home when I was 14 because it was dangerous and violent, and I went to Hyde Park, and to support myself, I opened a newsstand, I built it, and ended up being there for 20 years. It's totally unromantic. It's everything bad, except you're self-employed, and I'm trying to think of the good parts. Okay. Well, the other thing is, when I was 19, it was 4 years later, and I had an opportunity to open a kosher deli, which I knew nothing about. Nobody in my family knew anything about it. Just because you come from Eastern Europe, it doesn't mean your family automatically knows about salami and pastrami, but we didn't. So I went hunting around Chicago for months because we had an opportunity, my father and I, to open up a deli in the shopping center where the newsstand was on the perimeter. And we researched it for several months, and we did everything right. We found suppliers, we found ways to get cases for free, and it was remarkable. And my mother, who was an interior decorator, told me to paint the walls mustard, okay? And I wrote the ads and paid for it. I paid for it out of the newsstand profits, which is $8,500, which is about 50 grand today. I did everything right, and I thought, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to get out of the newsstand. I'm going to have a legitimate job. Turns out that if you've worked at a newsstand for 4 years, you do all this heavy labor, you don't want to really eat anything until maybe 10, after rush hour, and eat something conventional. The deli was filled with Spanish olives and chopped liver and smoked fish and pastrami and corned beef and salami. And in general, I didn't like any of those things. And you put all of them together at 5 o'clock in the morning when it opened, and I became nauseated. I couldn't work there. And I thought about life's twists and turns. Anyway, so I left it. And I turned it over to the people working there, and the agreement was, and this is why I'm telling you this, I owned it until they paid me for it, which took years. Okay, which means the people who worked there worked for me. At least I was responsible legally. Okay. 43 years ago, I had to go to this dance at the Hyde Park Kenwood Community Conference, and it was tomorrow, 43 years ago, April 27th. I kept a copy of the ticket. I was in a really, really bad mood. I'd been condemned to the newsstand for another 6 years, to Hyde Park with all these people from the university. I was the neighborhood paper boy, not something you want to know when you're almost 25. It didn't matter how many thousands of papers I was just a slave working. And I had to wear a tie, I had to wear a jacket. I didn't want to be there, and I didn't know how to dance, so I was in a really bad mood. So I show up, and it's in the Unitarian Church around where? Near the university, 57th Street or something. And I'm sitting, there's a whole row of chairs, nobody's sitting on because they're dancing, and I'm sitting alone. And after a while, during the evening, after a while, I see a woman I know, and her name is Crystal, and she's from Germany. And how do I know her? Because her husband comes by every Sunday to buy a Sunday New York Times in his black Model T, putt-putting along. And I just know him and her. And she's with a girl. And the girl's kind of ordinary, and she's wearing a pink pantsuit, and she has blonde hair and this white plastic thing I still don't know the name of, like this. And no makeup, and just kind of there. And Crystal brings her over to me, and because she sees I'm there, and she says, "Bob, hi. This is Joy. She's new to the neighborhood. Maybe you want to say hi to her." And I think, great, sure. And she leaves her and disappears. And Joy and I spent the next 3 hours talking. Didn't dance, didn't do anything. I asked her questions, she asked me questions. It was normal, and it made it possible to be there. Well, the highlight of the evening was a belly dancer, strangely for a Hyde Park group of women who were not like that. And they filled the whole massive area with all the people there, formed like an elliptical shape. And in the middle of it was this tall, blonde, glamorous creature with harem pants and whatever else, dancing, right? And she's kind of like a spinning top. She's going all around and all around. I'm watching, and she's nice looking, but there's something about her. And when she came close enough to be in focus, so Joy's standing here, and we're watching this, and I said, "I know her." And she's looking at me. I said, "I know her." And she gets closer, and I said, "She works for me in the deli." And this is a ridiculous thing to hear. And then she spins around the interior, makes a beeline through the crowd. They separate. She comes over and she kisses me. I don't even know her name, but she did that. And why do I care? Because for the rest of the time I knew Joyce, she knew no matter what I said, it was true. I still don't know the name of the belly dancer. So here's what happened. I wasn't there to pick up anybody. I didn't like anybody anyway, so I was leaving at the end, and Joy was leaving with Crystal, and they asked me if I wanted to go with them for coffee, and I said, "No, I just want to get out of here," and I left. Sometime during the evening, I mentioned to Joy that my birthday was the following Monday. I'd be 25. And I, never see her again. On Monday, I'm in my normal life, which is I'm wearing a T-shirt, I'm wearing jeans and sneakers, and I'm tying up magazines because it's magazine return day, and I have thousands of magazines, and it's horrible because you can't wear gloves and the twine cuts your fingers, and there's stacks and stacks, and it's hot that day, and I take off my shirt, so I'm sweating and I'm dirty, and I'm about as attractive as a toad, or feeling that way. And it's in the interior of the newsstand is smaller than the stage, and there's a little window, and there's a guy over there, a kid selling newspapers, and the door is open, and here's the Illinois Central train, and then there's the viaduct, Hyde Park Boulevard, and I'd look up periodically to see when a train came if they were going this way or toward the newsstand because it's rush hour, so I could help him. And then I look and I see in the distance this girl in a white dress, and she's good looking. I mean, that far away I could tell, and so she's walking, I'm tying up magazines, and I'm waiting for her to walk this way, thinking there's somebody in the brownstones of Hyde Park, lucky guy. And then I'm tying up, I look up, but she's not. She's walking this way. And it's Joyce. And it's Joyce holding a little package. wishing me happy birthday. It's a little tchotchke. And it wasn't Joyce. It was a creature. Her hair was shining. Her face was fabulous. She was wearing a dress. Her legs were like amazing. Man, Joyce was a girl. I didn't know that at the dinner dance. And I said, not much, but I said, I'm sorry, I don't have a shirt on. Do you mind? She said, no. And she came inside the newsstand and sat there on some metal milk crates and talked to me. And I talked to her, and then at the end of the evening, she got up to leave, and I shook hands with her, and she went home. And she came the next day, and she came the next day, and every evening, she stood up to leave, and I shook hands with her, and she went home. I didn't know what to do with her. I had never been involved with a woman as beautiful as her. Turns out that nobody talked to Joyce. Joyce was in bad relationships, and to everyone else, Joyce was a girl, a hot girl, period. Nobody was interested in what she thought, wanted to hear her opinions, and I was the first guy, and to her, I was special. I didn't quite grasp it right away, but I treated her like a whole person, and she kept coming day after day. And about 2 weeks in, she had figured out that I really liked her legs, and her dress got shorter. And you may know aggressive men that pick up women, and I'm the opposite of that. I'm coming from a violent place. I am not aggressive, and if I wasn't, I didn't know what to do with her anyway. So, she keeps coming. And on the 30th day, I remember a rabbi came from Hill Ale House in Hyde Park. And he was sitting, I remember he had a beard, kippah, and black coat. And he was sitting in front of the window, and I was here tying up magazines that day, and Joyce was sitting here. And he was talking to me and looking at her legs. And I was watching his eyes move from here to here and here to here. And something happened, and I realized that Joyce was attractive to other men. I don't know, something happened to break the ice of my inability to connect with Joyce. So I kind of willed him to leave. And eventually, just before we closed, we leave. And normally, she'd leave, I closed the door, there's a slide boat, I'd slide it, and I'd do whatever I did at the end of the day, and she went home. This time, she's leaving, and she has this look of disappointment in her eyes, and I understand. And she lifts her hand to shake hands with me. I'll get it. And I grab her by the shoulders, and I pull her toward me, and I kiss her. Like I've never kissed anyone. We backed up into the newsstand. I slammed the door shut, slid the slide bolt shut. Pretty soon my dirty T-shirt and her clothes were no longer a factor. For the rest of her life, she never went home again. I got all the way. We were married 33 months later in the Unitarian Church. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. There's a very touching story. Although one small part of it I'd like to comment on. The belly dancer. I know where she went to school. The Naval Academy. Thank you.